The frost crackled beneath my tires as I pulled into the driveway that Christmas Eve, expecting warmth, music, maybe laughter from the porch. But the house sat dark and silent, no lights, no wreath, just a cold, empty hush pressing against the windows. That's when I knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Christmas Eve should have smelled like cinnamon and home. But when I pulled up to my parents' porch, the only thing waiting for me was frost on the windows and silence thick enough to press against your chest. I found the spare key under that cracked old ceramic frog Dad once called too ugly for a thief to bother with, and let myself in. The house greeted me with a weak hum from the fridge and the slow, tired tick of the heater trying its best. The kitchen light flickered like it was thinking twice, casting shadows over a figure slumped at the table. Grandpa Alden, same sweater from last year, same kind of eyes, only dimmer now. He looked up and said softly, "You're here, like I was late to something nobody told me about." I asked where everyone was. He didn't answer, just tilted his head toward the fridge. There, taped like an afterthought on a torn corner of notebook paper, was Mom's unmistakable handwriting, slanted, rushed, all caps like a scream disguised as a note. "Used your money to invest in stocks? We'll explain later, watch Grandpa." Just like that, no greeting, no apology, just betrayal, scrawled in ink. And in that moment, I knew the holiday wasn't ruined. It had never even been meant for me. It didn't matter how many times I read the note. Each time, the words carved deeper. Used your money to invest in stocks. $24,000. Gone. 4 years of double shifts, skipped weekends, missed birthdays, and telling myself the sacrifice would be worth it. All of it vanished in a scribble of ink taped to a refrigerator. I sat across from Grandpa Alden, the paper trembling in my hand. They went to Maui," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Left yesterday morning." I blinked. "With my savings?" He didn't answer, just looked down at the sandwich in front of him like it might disappear too. "I thought maybe you'd sent them something," he added, when I noticed the envelope was gone from the counter. I opened the fridge. Half a loaf of dry bread, some mustard, a bottle of tonic water, no milk, no leftovers. The sink was stacked with dishes, the air stale with silence. An unopened final notice from the power company peeked out from under a toaster. I swallowed the heat rising in my throat. "Have you eaten anything besides that?" I asked, nodding to the sandwich. Grandpa didn't look up. "Huh, haven't managed much else this week." I didn't cry. Not then. I just tossed the note on the counter and took a breath that felt heavier than it should have. "All right," I said softly. "First, we're getting you a proper meal." I looked at Grandpa Alden, oatmeal on his breath and gratitude in his eyes, and I made a quiet promise to both of us. I was going to get to the bottom of this. Because this wasn't just about missing money anymore. This was about dignity, memory, betrayal. I made him oatmeal with diced apples and honey, just like he used to make it for me when I had skinned knees and spelling tests. He ate every bite like it was a 5-star meal. Then he thanked me with a gentleness that made something twist in my chest. Afterward, I did the dishes. Ran the dishwasher. Pretended the trembling in my hands was from the cold and not the truth knocking at the back of my brain. Then I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where I once did my algebra homework while Mom clipped coupons and opened my laptop. Bank records don't lie, not the way people do. A final transfer 3 days ago, not to any joint family account, not to some emergency fund for Grandpa's medicine, no. This one went straight to a brokerage account I'd never seen, listed under both my parents' names. Balance 0, amount withdrawn $24,000, 0 cents. My entire savings. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred, then I leaned back and looked at the ceiling, hoping maybe some answer might be scribbled between the paint cracks. But all I found were ghosts. Old echoes of me believing they'd never do something like this. I started saving when I was 16. Dad had just lost his job at the auto shop. Mom's hours at the craft store were spotty, and the fridge had more frost than food. I got hired slinging eggs at the diner on Maple. Added weekend shifts at the laundromat. While my classmates were getting ready for prom, I was sorting strangers' underwear and pulling burnt hash browns off a flat-top grill. I didn't complain, I didn't party, I saved. Remember the day I opened that savings account? I was so proud. Exhausted but proud. I handed Mom the folder with the account number, told her I'd finally set it up. She smiled, tight-lipped, and said, Banks take advantage of young people. Just transfer it to our family account. I'll keep it safe until you need it. And I believed her. Month after month, I moved money. First a couple hundred, then more. Even when I was working hospital graveyard shifts and eating rice 5 nights a week, I kept sending it. I drove a car that squeaked like a wounded squirrel and skipped 3 Christmases to save more. I told myself, this is how you earn freedom. Quietly, one stubborn deposit at a time. Emma never had to think that way. 6 years younger, but raised in a different house somehow. When I turned 16, I got bills and responsibilities. When Emma turned 16, she got a new iPhone and a Pinterest weather cake. While I cleaned hospital bathrooms and skipped flu meds to make rent, Emma posted selfies from concerts and spa days Mom somehow paid for. Emma's more sensitive, Mom would whisper, as if empathy were a reason to ignore a price tag. We don't want to burden her. And maybe for a while I believed them, believed I was the strong one, the reliable one, the one who could carry what others couldn't. But sitting there, in a cold house with unpaid bills, a sandwich for dinner, and a stolen future, I finally asked myself the question I'd been avoiding for years. Had I spent my whole life carrying things that were never mine to hold? I sat across the room from Grandpa, his head tilted back in his recliner, one hand still gently clutching the worn armrest like it might float away without him. The envelope I'd taped shut earlier, filled with bank statements, overdraft notices, and the ghosts of good faith, lay on the table beside me, thick and heavy like a book of confessions. I didn't open my laptop to gawk at the damage again. I'd already done that. I opened it because it was time to track it, to turn their betrayal into evidence. Because if they thought they could drain everything I had and still wave it off as family love, they were about to learn just how much I had left in me. The next morning started with the dry, papery sound of Grandpa coughing down the hallway. A sound that didn't rise, didn't rage, just lingered. A cough that knew dust. I wrapped myself in an old quilt and found him in the kitchen, already halfway to the sink, both hands shaking as he tried to fill a glass of water without dropping it. I took it gently, steadied him by the elbow, and led him to the kitchen table. He sat down slowly, like his bones had forgotten how to fold. "Did you take your morning meds?" I asked, keeping my voice even. His eyes flickered, guilty. "I ran out 2 days ago," he said. "Emma told me she was busy." I moved to the cabinet where we kept his prescriptions. The pill organizer was empty. I rifled through drawers, nothing. The refill notice was stuck beneath a pile of grocery flyers, his name printed clearly, pickup date circled in fading pink highlighter. 5 days ago. My gut turned cold. I checked the fridge next. Expired yogurts, a takeout box with something hard and gray inside, mold on the bread. The only thing in the fruit bowl was a shriveled orange that looked more like a memory than a snack. In the sink, plates crusted with old food sat waiting for a kindness no one had offered. I followed the trail into the hallway, toward the mail by the door. Final notices. One envelope in red, utilities past due. And still, Emma's jacket is on the coat rack. Her makeup bag was on the bathroom counter. A bed made in the guest room she sometimes used when watching Grandpa, like she was some benevolent niece instead of the daughter she never acted like. But care? That had packed its bags long ago. I sat back down beside Grandpa and opened my laptop again. This time I wasn't just looking. I was building a timeline. The bank records painted the story, slow drips at first. $80, 0 cents here, $150, 0 cents there, labeled as groceries, emergency expenses, supplies for Grandpa. Nothing ever showed up. Then the numbers grew. $500, 0 cents, $1,200, 0 cents. An investment opportunity, a plane ticket. The dates. They lined up perfectly with Susan and Robert's posts from Maui. "They've been draining this for months," I said aloud, mostly to myself. "I'm sorry, Lily," Grandpa whispered. "I should have said something, but I didn't know how." "You knew?" I asked. "Not at first," he said, voice thin. "They said it was just a loan, for Emma's tuition, for her car, then for the kitchen. They kept saying they'd pay it back, but they never did." I stopped asking. I felt a familiar ache behind my ribs, the kind that had lived there most of my life, quiet and constant, like background noise I'd learned to ignore. But now it was roaring. I reached for his hand and squeezed it. "Then we stop asking," I said. "We start protecting what's left." That afternoon, I spread our records across the table like puzzle pieces. I didn't call anyone. Not when I found the brokerage transfer. Not when I realized Grandpa's medications had gone unfilled. Not when I saw the overdraft notice tucked behind a Red Lobster coupon. Because I already knew the truth. They weren't sorry. They weren't confused. They were counting on me to do what I always did. Clean it up, hold my tongue, call it love. So instead, I opened a folder on my desktop and titled it Damage Control. I uploaded every transaction. Took photos of the fridge, the spoiled bread, the empty med organizer. I scanned utility bills, pharmacy alerts, and the untouched prescription slip Emma never bothered to pick up. I pulled up texts from Susan, with lines like, "We're all in this together. You've always been the responsible one. So inspiring." I added them to the stack. And I sent a message to Rachel. She was the kind of friend who'd always known when I wasn't okay. Back in college when I skipped meals during finals, she was the one who quietly started bringing me snacks without asking questions. Now she was a corporate attorney in Seattle. But she replied within an hour like we were still 22, sharing a dorm microwave and late-night therapy sessions. I told her everything. Her response didn't come with pity, just instructions. You need to get a power of attorney for your grandfather. Immediately. She sent me the forms. I printed them at the library down the street and brought them home in a plastic sleeve. Grandpa read every line slowly. He didn't ask for a break. Didn't hesitate. Just nodded, took the pen, and signed with a hand steadier than I expected. "I should have done this a year ago," he said, resting his palm on mine. "You've always been the one holding things together." We got it notarized at the pharmacy that same afternoon. When I asked if his prescriptions were ready, the tech frowned. "Insurance didn't clear it," she said. "Someone came in last week, tried to pick them up without an ID." I didn't ask who. That night, after Grandpa went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and made a list. 1. Cancel all joint access. 2. Open new accounts. 3. Document every loss. 4. No contact not until we had legal footing. Out of curiosity, I opened Instagram. There they were, Susan and Robert, on a boat somewhere warm. Susan in a floral dress with a drink in hand, Robert grinning behind sunglasses. Sunset cruise with my love, deserved paradise. The comments were all clapping emojis and envy. "You both look amazing, so happy for you." I didn't reply, just took a screenshot and filed it under vacation funded by theft. By morning I'd closed the bank account where my student loan payments used to go, opened a new one in Grandpa's name, redirected his social security, locked the mailbox, added passwords to every utility and healthcare portal. When the pharmacy called again, I confirmed my identity and told them kindly but clearly that no one else should be authorized to access Grandpa's prescriptions. I didn't scream, I didn't send an angry paragraph or a Facebook rant. I just made it impossible for them to touch us again. When I hung up the phone, I poured a glass of water, sat back at the table, and looked at the neat stack of folders I'd created, proof that we weren't powerless. For the first time in weeks I felt something settle over me, not forgiveness, not rage, just stillness. Control. 3 days passed in quiet defiance. The kind of silence that builds around you when you finally stop begging people to do right by you. Then Robert's name lit up my phone. I didn't answer the first time, or the second, or the third. But on the 4th ring, I picked up. Not because I wanted to hear his voice, but because I wanted to hear the desperation in it. "Lily," he said, breathless, "thank God. We need to talk." I didn't respond. I just let the static stretch between us like a rope he was fraying with every second. "The market dropped," he finally said. "We didn't see it coming. Look, it's complicated. We just need to get through this week. We'll fix everything, I promise." In the background I could hear waves or maybe a decorative hotel fountain. I pictured him barefoot on a Maui balcony, sunburned and stunned, still smelling of sunscreen and arrogance. "We lost almost everything," he said. "The funds wiped out." I looked down at the table where Grandpa's documents sat, everything sorted, labeled, and sealed. Medical, housing, savings. Secure for the first time in years. "I need to borrow just enough to stabilize things," he added quickly. "We'll pay you back, of course. It's just temporary." Still I said nothing. "Lily, you there?" I stood and walked to the front window. Rain slid down the glass in long streaks. The street was empty, except for a tipped-over trash bin. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was just the universe making its point. "You knew that money wasn't yours," I said softly. He paused, then tried to shift the narrative like he always did. "We were investing in our future. Yours too. It wasn't selfish, it was—" "You thought I wouldn't notice," I said. "Look," he said, the calm fraying, We don't have time to argue. I just need you to send something, please. I hung up. That night, after Grandpa went to bed, I printed a one-page notice. I folded it with surgical precision, tucked it inside a manila envelope, and drove across town to their house. I taped it to the front door. Its access revoked. Unauthorized withdrawals documented. Repayment required. See attached terms. Inside, copies of the account statements, the affidavit of power of attorney, and a repayment plan with fixed monthly amounts, interest, and zero tolerance for delay. It was polite, legal, ice cold. They'd made it about money, so I responded like it was money, measurable, emotionless, and enforceable. The next morning, Susan sent a text. "What is this about? We need to talk." I didn't answer. They'd had their chance to talk when they drained my savings, when they left Grandpa without food or medicine, when they'd bet everything on a vacation and called it family planning. Instead, I spent the day confirming Grandpa's new place at an assisted living center near my apartment in Portland. We'd taken the virtual tour together the night before. He watched it quietly, then nodded. "Looks peaceful," he said. That night, I sat beside him on the couch while he told me the story of how he met Grandma at a diner after her nursing shift. She never raised her voice, he said, but she never backed down either. "You remind me of her," he added, smiling. I didn't say anything. I was too busy memorizing the peace in his face. We both knew they'd be home soon, but for the first time I wasn't afraid of their return. They arrived 2 hours earlier than expected. Robert's truck first, Susan's car right behind. No lays, no smiles, just tension and sunburned regret. I opened the door before they knocked. Susan pushed past me, scowling. Robert followed with the envelope in hand, holding it like it might burn him. "What the hell is this?" he snapped. Susan threw her purse on the couch. "You humiliated us. The neighbors saw that." "You couldn't wait until we got back?" "I waited," I said. "Years." "Don't get self-righteous," Robert growled. "We were trying to help you. That money wasn't stolen, it was redirected. You'll get it back." "No," I said. "I won't. And even if I did, that's not the point." Grandpa shuffled in, leaning on his cane. He stood behind me, quiet, watching. "You're being manipulated," Susan said to him, her voice turning syrupy. "She's filling your head with—" "You already took everything," Grandpa said, cutting her off. His voice was low, but it carried. "She's just giving it a definition." Silence fell so fast it felt physical. Susan blinked. "We did what we had to for the family. We were under pressure." "You were reckless," I said, "and you made it everyone else's problem." Susan's voice cracked. "How can you be so cold after everything we've done for you?" I looked at her and saw it clearly, how she still believed that guilt was currency and sacrifice meant silence. "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's a responsibility. The kind you never taught us." Robert opened his mouth, but Grandpa raised a hand. "That's enough," he said. They stood frozen, like guests in someone else's home, and for the first time it actually felt like mine. 2 weeks later, Grandpa moved into Oak Haven. His room had sunlight, a recliner by the window, space for his crossword books, and the photo of Grandma he kept beside his bed. The staff greeted him by name. He smiled more in the first hour there than he had in a month. I visited every other day. Sometimes I brought groceries, sometimes I just listened. He said he didn't miss the house, just the quiet parts of it. Susan and Robert never called again. Emma stayed silent. A month later I heard the house went on the market. The listing said, "Great bones, needs updates." I didn't disagree. I started rebuilding, quietly, small transfers into an account with only my name on it, no shared access, no favors, just me. Some nights I picked up extra shifts. Other nights I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by folders and receipts, piecing together a life I could finally call my own. One morning, on my way to work, I passed the old house. The porch was still cracked where Robert always said he'd fix it. The blinds were drawn. A crooked for sale sign leaned toward the weeds. I didn't slow down, but I smiled. Because some houses aren't homes. And some families only teach you what not to become. If this story moved you, even just a little, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family or walk away to protect your peace? Your story matters too. Share it below. If you found strength in Lily's journey or saw a piece of yourself in Grandpa Alden, don't forget to hit that like button. It helps us reach more people who need to hear stories like this, real, raw, and deeply human. And if you want more powerful emotional stories about family, boundaries, and taking your life back on your terms, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. We've got so much more to share, and I'd love for you to be part of this growing community. Until next time, take care of yourself, protect what's yours, and remember, sometimes the family you fight for is the one you build yourself.